Hello, my name is Brittany. Welcome to my channel. Today we are talking about the books that I DNF'd or did not finish. I have 6 books that I want to talk to you about today, and my purpose and my intention for this video is to provide a little clarification on why I would stop reading a book. I know there's some people who just will like trudge through and force themselves to read it. I just am not, I'm not that person. But in this book or this video, what I can say is that I am not going to be able to provide you like a star rating on any of these books because I did not finish them. I will talk to you about if how far along I got in the book, 2, why I stopped reading the book, and 3, if I would pick it up at a later date. Let's get into it. We have 6 books I want to talk to you guys about today. Let's get started. So the first book I want to talk about is Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Basterica. I'm so sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly. This book is following the main character, Marco. He is visiting multiple meat packaging institutions, companies. In this book, it is about cannibalism. At this time in the world, humans are told not to eat livestock like animals anymore because they are infected. However, there's still this very much strong promotion that eating protein sources that are vegetable, like that are vegan, is not enough. It's not enough. And so you need like basically red meat of some sort to get protein. This starts a wave of cannibalism. It starts a wave of cannibalism, first starting with people who have a lower social economic status, as well as minorities who are cannibalized first. And then we are taken along and given so much detail about the intricacies of how this processing works, how they mitigate issues of people trying to run away, how their breeding process of breeding more humans. And we are following Marco, who at first wants to believe that he is this upstanding citizen, and then things happen and lines are crossed. That is a brief synopsis. I got about like 50-ish pages into this book, and the issue that I had with this book is, one, it does this thing where I guess I gotta give it to the author, but it does this thing where you're trying to read this book and there's these points where you're trying to desocialize or disassociate from it, but it keeps on pulling you back. It keeps on pulling you back into the reality of the story and the gore. Two, a lot of the reviews that I read after I stopped reading it stated that it was just gory for the sake of being gory, which was a little bit too much for me. But the third thing, and I think it was very much the environment in which I started reading this book in, which made me stop. I was at this event. The event was, I was just like waiting to see the performance I needed to see. That doesn't matter. But I had some time. I had a lot of time on my hands. So I was like, okay, cool. Let me start this book. However, this event was filled, like pretty much everybody at this big auditorium were all like African American individuals. And like reading this book where they specifically and explicitly state that majority of the people who are first rounded up into this cannibalistic business adventure are minorities, and then reading all of these deplorable things, as well as being in a room with people who look like what the book said would happen, like they look like the people who are being victimized in this book, which is a little bit too, it was a little bit too real. It was a little too real. And I was just like my brain started to like contort, and I said, oh yeah, no, we're gonna stop. When I finished this book the first time, well, when I DNF'd the book the first time, I thought that I was gonna go back and eventually read it, but it was one of those books where I thoroughly had a better time just hearing somebody else's like plot summary of what happened in the book, and that was very much sufficient for me. The second book I want to talk to you guys about is Asada. This is the autobiography of Asada Shakur, and wow. So this book is about Asada. She is a well-known Black Panther who was very much an integral member of that group. However, if you don't know, which you probably should, the Black Panther was seen as a terrorist group, and through J. Edgar Hoover's policy and campaign trying to get rid and extinguish members of that group and that group in general. Asado, she was driving with, I believe, a friend in the New Jersey Turnpike when, after some things happened, some things occurred, and now she is basically accused of being an accomplice in the shooting of a police officer. And that is the book that we're reading. Yeah, that's the book that we're reading, and things happen. So this is kind of like her story of what has happened. Now she is living in Cuba, from my knowledge, or from the back of the book. I don't know. I haven't checked to see any further updates. I DNF'd this book just because, like, it just, when I was reading it, it just was not the time to read it. It was just not the time to read it. This is 110%, like, okay, it can't be 110%, like 100%. I'm definitely going to come back to this book and finish this book, and I just kind of really want to do like a deep dive, like a history, like use my degree for something, deep dive on this book. So this is definitely a book I'm going to come back to. But it was one of those movies where it was one of those times where I stopped reading this because it is so heavy that you really need to be like in a really like specific mental space to read it and like digest it. And so yeah, that is this book, but she will be read. Blank blank. The third book I want to talk to you guys about that I stopped reading is Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. I read Magnolia Parks, and I was like, okay, cool, like I want to read all the books in the series. And I don't know what it was, but at the beginning of this year, I just could not find a book that clicked. I just couldn't find a book that I could get through without wanting to like stop reading it. It was so hard. But the reason why I stopped reading Daisy Hates is I don't know what happens. I think I got maybe 30 pages into the book. The book does have different POVs, so that was one thing. I did read Magnolia Parks, as I mentioned before, so there were some similar characters that we hear from. However, I think one, I was kind of getting a little confused with all the characters, and two, there's this love interest. Like Daisy likes this one boy in the group. Like they're all a friend group in some way or shape or form. Let me explain that a little bit better. So, Magnolia Parks, she hangs out, like she has friends, and these friends are like very upper echelon. They have money, whether legal or not. They all have money and they all hang out with each other. And the first book is mainly about Magnolia Parks, but we also learn about the characters, like her friends, who they are, and just like the messiness of the group. Daisy is not friends with Magnolia, but she's friends with Magnolia's friends. Does that make sense? So we're still learning about some of the similar characters, but Daisy is the main character. However, one of the people who she likes, the person who she likes Magnolia Parks more than he likes her. So it's in the situation where I was reading it and I was just like, I feel like, could be wrong, I feel like these two, like the author is going to somehow bring these two together, and there's, in the events that occur, there's no way where I'm going to be like, oh yeah, they are cute together. There's no way. There's no way. It didn't feel like the story was about Daisy. Maybe I didn't read further enough into it. It just felt like it was about everybody around her and not about her. And so it wasn't the time to read it. I think I will go back and read it again just because I want to read the whole series and I think that it might be good. And then I can actually give you a real review. But I got about like 30 pages in and I said, this is not how we're going to start off this year with this book. The fourth book I want to talk to you guys about is Find Balance. This book is going through the complete lives of four individuals who have come together to live in an apartment or a flat. This is based in India. So we have a widow, a a man who dropped out of college, as well as an uncle and his nephew. They all come to stay in the widow's house so that some of them came to work, some of them just needed housing. And so they're kind of about to have this community house, and they're all there about to live together. And then we are taking one person at a time all the way back to the beginning of their life, and we are told every single little moment that has arisen and has occurred for them to get to this point. Right. And then, so the first thing we learn about is the widow. And then we are taken back in time with the uncle and nephew to the beginning and all of the events that in their life that have occurred until they get to the widow's house. And so I got to like the uncle and nephew story. I had to stop. Because it's not that it was bad. It was just like I'm not this strong of a reader. One, look at the size of these. Look at the size. Look at the size. Look at it. Look at the size of these words. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a lot of there's a lot of words per page, and it was taking too long. Also, this book is mainly just exposition. There's not that much dialogue. One and two, it just wasn't that interesting. I think it was going to be interesting once all the stories came together, but in the time that I had to, it was kind of like we were in the rising action a little bit too long, couldn't get through it. So I've gotten through about 1/3 of the book is how much I got. That doesn't look like 1/3. I don't think that I'm going to be picking up this book again. The fifth book that I would like to talk to you guys about is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Crosby. And I've heard so many people say that this is like an amazing book. I will be going back for my third time trying. I know. Maybe I'm delusional. But this is the third time trying. I will go back and I will be trying to read this book. However, I've tried 2 times. The first time I couldn't get past the first chapter. The second time I couldn't get past the second chapter, and I don't know, and I really wish I could articulate in a more succinct way what it is, but there's something about the book that just, I don't know if I'm just like reading it at the wrong time, or there's just something about the book that is like, I'm having a hard time like digging myself into the book, right? Like I don't feel nestled in the book. Like I don't know if that makes sense. There's like books that you read where you feel like, oh my goodness, like I've been like immersed into the book. The words are just a pathway to experience whatever the story is around me. If you get it, you get it. Hopefully you do. I don't know. But there are other books in which it feels like you're just like hovering over the story in terms of like the story is just a bird's eye view and you're just like reading, just kind of like getting through it, and you don't feel immersed in the story. I just could not get myself immersed in the story, and it just felt like I was pushing something that didn't need to be pushed. Like I was like trudging my way through a story that didn't need to be trudged through, and I don't know why that is. I might try again. Like, give me a couple of years. The final book that I'm going to talk to you guys about that I have DNF'd is Eat the Document. This book is about 2 individuals who are like in a relationship. From my understanding, they're in a romantic relationship, and they have to go live separate lives and act like they don't know each other. Because of radical protests due to the Vietnam War, they kind of go each other separate ways, create new identities for themselves, and they don't know if the other one exists. And so we're reading this book. It is dual POV, I believe. And I think it was one of those things, again, I was at the beginning of this year, I was at this place where I was like, I don't want to read this. Like, this is not what I want to read. And it just wasn't what I wanted to read at that time. It wasn't one of those books that I felt like, oh, like, completely, like, grappled and, like, sucked me in. So I stopped. And I was just like, I'll come back to you. I have intentions on coming back to this book. I honestly do not know when. There are, like, other books on my shelf that I have now. It looks like my shelf, I don't know if you've seen the other videos, but it keeps growing. it keeps growing. But there are other books that I want to read. So these books, some of the books I will definitely come back to. Will it be this year? I don't know. I can't promise you that. Thank you guys for watching today's video. That is all of the books I've DNF'd thus far. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And guess what? I'll see you next time. Bye.